Welcome to Work From Your Happy Place, the podcast that equips you with the tools, know-how, and motivation to live your dreams and find your happy place. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter for a recap of the week's guests and a preview of what's in store. To sign up, simply text the word Happy Place with no space to 33444. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the host of Work From Your Happy Place, Belinda Ellsworth.
Hello, everyone. It's Belinda Ellsworth with Work From Your Happy Place, and we have got a great show in store for you today. I have the pleasure of having John Lee Dumas with me today as my guest. John Lee Dumas is the founder and host of EOFire, an award-winning podcast where he interviews today's most successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. John has interviewed over 1,200 entrepreneurs, and EOFire generates over 1 million monthly listeners. John continues to inspire Fire Nation to conquer their fears and take the entrepreneurial leap. It is my pleasure. Welcome, John.
Well, Belinda, I couldn't be more excited to be here. Your energy is outstanding. We are going to burn this place to the ground.
All right. Well, I am certainly excited. So why don't you just start by filling in our guests with just a little bit of background about yourself and kind of a little bit about your journey, because, man, it's been a powerful one. So why don't you just fill people in on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, my journey started in the state of Maine, so on a pretty similar latitude to Michigan. You know, I definitely know the winters, and I miss them and don't miss them at the same time, because I currently reside in San Diego, which is perfect weather all the time. That's just how we roll. And, you know, I grew up there for the first 18 years of my life in Maine. Went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship and spent the next 4 years post-college as an officer in the U.S. Army, specifically a tank commander in charge of 4 tanks and 16 men, and did a little deployment to Iraq for a year, which was pretty intense for all the obvious reasons. Then I got back and finished out my 4 years in the military and decided it was time at 26 years old to conquer the world. So I promptly went to law school and quit after six months, just one semester, went to corporate finance in Boston, quit after really just 18 months of dying a slow death in a cubicle. Then I tried commercial and residential real estate on both the West and the East Coast, and none of these things were either enjoyable for me or successful for me. I was just failing for 6 years. But finally, at 32 years old, I had my aha moment. I decided to create a 7-day-a-week podcast, which I lovingly refer to as EOFire, Entrepreneur on Fire. And we're at over 1,300 episodes to date, over 1.2 million listens per month. And it's just been a blast.
That is awesome. And so you've had the show now for about 3 years. Is that about right?
Yeah, 3.5.
You know, one of the things that I would love you to, before we even get into telling us how this has all shaped your lifestyle, but a lot of people look at that and they think, I'm glad you told that backstory of that 6 years of quote unquote failing. But a lot of people look at it and go, wow, you know, in just 3 years, you've done all this. It must be easy and I'm going to do it too. And I think there's a lot of hard work that goes in that. And then at the same time, I think people look at it as inspiring and go, well, my gosh, if this guy can change courses several times and now has found his passion, I can do that too. So it's both inspiring, and at the same time, I think some people think it's easier than it appears. And I would love you to just elaborate on that a little bit.
So I love that quote that it's been an overnight success, 10 years in the making. And that was pretty much exactly what it was for me. I mean, when I graduated college at 22, you know, I thought I was off to the races. And I spent the next 10 years struggling in pretty much every aspect of life. I mean, every officer struggles because it's so challenging to be a military officer. So that was a given. But then, you know, the 6 years post-military, I really thought that I was going to be able to do some pretty cool things. And unfortunately, I just kept failing, but learning from those failures. What worked, what didn't work, what inspired me, what didn't inspire me, X, Y, Z. So all really important things that kind of grew to the quote-unquote overnight success of EOFire in 2012.
That's great. Well, and I just want to take this moment. I'm sure all of our listeners are thinking the same thing, but just thank you for your service. That certainly is something very important, and I know everyone appreciates.
Well, Belinda, I appreciate the appreciation.
Great. So how has being an entrepreneur shaped your lifestyle?
Wow. Well, it shaped it pretty much in every way, shape, and form that I could ever say. I mean, I went from working for the man or the woman, whoever was the boss at the time, and being on somebody else's clock, being under somebody else's thumb, being on somebody else's schedule, making money for somebody else's pockets and just kind of collecting my quote unquote salary, to, being in control of my life, of waking up and saying, hey, I chose freedom. I chose the ability to fail miserably or succeed greatly or somewhere in between. But everything on my calendar, from this interview to whatever it might be, is because I chose to do so. And that's a really wonderful feeling.
Absolutely. So why don't you share with us just a couple of skill sets that you think that have contributed greatly to your success?
Definitely discipline. I'm a very disciplined young man, and actually not that young anymore as I enter my late 30s, but still spry. Discipline has been a big part of my life in every way, shape, and form. I go to bed at 9:15, ain't ashamed of it. Wake up at 5:30. I get more done before 9 a.m. than the rest of the world does all day. That's kind of a military quote that I stole and applied to entrepreneurship. And guess what? It's worked out pretty darn well. So I'm very disciplined. I'm very routine. I love establishing good habits and trying to get rid of bad habits, which isn't always that easy, but I do my best. And overall, it's just been a journey where I say, hey, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to grow the right habits. I'm going to make sure that I'm focused on the right things. And that Pareto's principle, 80-20, that's 20% of your actions can result in 80% of your success. I've really taken that to heart. And I just focus on the 20% and let the 80% just kind of float away.
That's great. Discipline certainly is one of the key contributors to success, I would say, for most entrepreneurs. All right. So why don't you share with us a challenge or obstacle that you faced along the way in your journey and how you worked through that?
So there have been a lot of obstacles and a lot of challenges in my journey. The biggest one to date really started even before I pressed the little red button that launched EOFire into the universe, because I hired a mentor at great expense. I joined a mastermind at great expense. I was all in. I bought the equipment, which I went all in on. I mean, you can be podcasting for less than $50 today. I went all in and spent thousands of thousands on stuff that I just didn't need, but I thought that I did at the time. Now, I did all of that, and I was prepared for my launch date of August 15th. And that day came, Belinda, and I woke up terrified, frozen with fear, absolutely paralyzed. And I made up some BS excuse to my mentor, to my mastermind partners, and I pushed it back 2 weeks, and I pushed it back another 2 weeks, then another 2 weeks. And before you know it, I'm thinking, should I even ever publish this? I'm doubting myself that much. I was really in a spiral, the imposter syndrome. That voice in my head was saying, who are you to launch this podcast? Everybody's going to hate it. Luckily, my mentor knew what was going on. She caught on, and she said, John, if you don't launch your podcast today, I will fire you. And the only thing I was more scared of, Belinda, than launching my podcast was losing my mentor. She was kind of my rock. So I launched the podcast and everything turned out great. And the biggest regret is those 6 weeks that I could have launched EOFire that will be lost forever.
I've pushed mine back a few weeks here, but it hasn't.
As every podcaster does. Join the club, Belinda.
Oh my gosh, but mine hasn't been. I've got all my interviews in the can, or a lot of interviews.
You're scared. You're scared. You're the imposter syndrome. You're letting other excuses take control. It's just called being a human being.
And it's getting that doggone website all connected and working.
Yep, another excuse. We think we have to get our website set up. You don't. You just need to launch your podcast.
Okay. Well, I've set my date today that I'm not pushing back again, and we're moving forward. All right. So we all know how we spend our time is critical to our overall success. It's one of the things I speak about on my platform is how you spend your day. And give us a snapshot. You kind of have done that a little bit, which I loved, but just maybe elaborate a little bit more on a day in the life of John Lee Dumas.
So a day in the life of John Lee Dumas really starts the night before, because if you're not getting to bed early enough to get your 8 hours of sleep, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And Anybody that says they can get by on 6 hours, even 7 hours, you're lying to yourself. You can't. You're setting yourself up for a massive fall down the road. So I make sure I'm in bed at 9:15 every night. So I'm getting 8 hours of sleep every evening, at a minimum, sometimes slightly more. I'm up at 5:30 a.m., off to the races and getting my exercise in, getting my healthy breakfast in, and then starting the day. And that means getting to inbox zero. I'm a big proponent of inbox zero. And then it's hitting the little inbox pause button so no other emails come into me until I'm ready. And I focus on my one big task of the day, whatever that might be.
Oh, that's great. Some great pieces of advice. So what does working from your happy place mean to you?
It means waking up in the morning knowing that everything on my schedule is something that I chose to put there purposefully, intentionally. And that's been the way for a number of years now. Like this interview that we're having right now is because I intentionally said, yes, I can do an interview on this date and time. Gave you my scheduling link. You booked yourself in. You're episode 9 of 10 of me today. Or I should say your interview 9 of 10. I'm doing 10 back-to-back interviews today. About to close out strong with the next interview. And that's how I run my life. Like I make sure that everything is very intentional and everything I say yes to is a hell yes. Otherwise, it's a simple no.
Obviously, it must be pretty rewarding to hear all the people that you've inspired and that you've been able to help along the way as well, wouldn't you say?
It's the most favorite thing of my business is the ripple effect where not so much the emails, Belinda, from people that are like, John, your podcast has inspired me to do X. Like I love those emails, but the emails I love even more is when people say, John, you've inspired me to do X. I did X, and look at this email that I got today from somebody whose life I changed. Like that ripple effect to me is amazing.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give to others who want to be an entrepreneur or want to find that happiness with their career?
I'd say really take a step back and give yourself space. So few of us ever take time to breathe and to really evaluate the direction our lives are going in. And if you do, you're probably not going to like it a lot. You might like it a little bit. You might love it, and then you're one of the lucky few. But if you really give yourself time to evaluate the path that you are on and you don't like it, then you can start to identify ways that you can shift, that you can pivot. It can be small steps at first. But as you continue going forward, then you're going to know that, hey, like this works or this doesn't. Let me pivot a little bit more. And everybody who's hearing my voice right now has chosen to listen to this podcast. So they're already on that path of learning more about what, makes sense for them or in a happy workplace, et cetera. And that's great. And that really means that, hey, you are somebody who cares enough. The other 99% of people that will never hear this podcast, they're just never going to take that step back and really evaluate the path of their life. So if you can take a step back, evaluate your life, identify the things that aren't working, and then come up with things that can fix that or can adjust your course and start living intentionally, it won't be overnight. It won't be over the next 6 months, but over time, it will start to happen. You'll see the shift and it will be impactful. A great book on this topic is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Love that book for all of those reasons.
I love that book too. It's a good time to say, I know you asked me this, but is there any other books that you have that are some of your favorites?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say that if you haven't read The Compound Effect, that is the book to read after The Slight Edge, because Darren Hardy, the founder of Success Magazine, he was mentored by Jeff Olson, the author of The Slight Edge. And then he decided to launch The Compound Effect, which that book really took it to the next level. And I loved it.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of meeting both of those gentlemen and reading both of those books. Yeah, they're both awesome. All right. So tell us what current things that you're working on and a little bit more about how people can sort of connect with you. I know you've got several different platforms. I belong to EOFire and follow that and some of the other things that you've got going on. But why don't you just enlighten our listeners a little bit more on some of the exciting things you're working on and all the many different ways they can connect with you?
Well, I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. And for anybody that's wondering, all of the magic that we create happens at EOFire.com. And something that I'm really excited and passionate about that is really my sole focus that we're working on right now is the Freedom Journal. We had an amazing Kickstarter campaign in early 2016 where we became the 6th most funded publishing campaign of all time at over 7,000 backers and $453,000 for the Freedom Journal. Accomplish your number one goal in 100 days. I saw so clearly, Belinda, that the number one struggle of so many struggling entrepreneurs is that they don't know how to set and accomplish goals. I set out in early 2015 to fix that, to bridge that gap, to really be the solution for that. And that turned into this beautiful leather-bound, gold embossed journal called the Freedom Journal, which will guide you in accomplishing your number one goal in 100 days. We sold over 10,000 copies to date. We have it in Amazon. It's also even more well-priced at thefreedomjournal.com. So you can go check it out there. And it's just really what I set out to create in early 2015 that came to fruition in 2016, the first physical product out of EOFire, and I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. I have it. I just actually got it and haven't started. I'm like thinking about what I want specifically that goal to be. I'm very goal oriented as well, and so
Nice.
I want to be very specific about what this one's going to be,
Right.
and play it out. I wanted our podcast to be really a lot different, and so I had decided. I've done a lot of research in the last couple of years with the whole happiness factor and happiness project and all the research on what it means to be happy. And it's really interesting because one of those top 5 characteristics in every single person, one is obviously that they enjoy their work, but one of the number one contributing factors is that people that have goals and have something to look forward to and that are striving toward something are much more overall happier than the people that don't.
100%. Everything that I've read on that, it really points to the goal of humans is to be consistently driving and striving towards a worthy goal. Like I love that Dale Carnegie quote is that success and happiness is the gradual realization of a worthy ideal. Like it's not the realization and it's not any ideal. It's gradually realizing that worthy ideal.
It is. And one of the things, because I speak on goal setting, is we used to ask people why they don't set goals. You mentioned the 20-80 rule, and a lot of that goes along with productivity. So the only about 20% of people are honest to goodness setting goals. So then that's why they only see that level of productivity. The rest of the people are kind of going along and let's wait and see what happens. And what's really interesting is today, and this hasn't been the same, I've been doing this for over 20 years. When you ask people their number one reason of not setting a goal today, it's because of their fear of failure. And they don't want anyone having any expectations of them. And I'm just blown away on a continual basis when I think about how that can contribute to your overall happiness, your overall success, and people continue to live their lives in an area of fear. And so I would just love you to just share on that just a little bit in our last few minutes we have together.
Listeners, you are the authors of your own book. You are the masters of your own destiny. I mean, you are the captain of your own ship. It's time to take the wheel and actually start being intentional about the life that you're leading, because so many people just flow through life. And there's a great book on this topic called The 10 Biggest Regrets of the Dying. Then they look back when they're dying and they say, I just wish I lived a life on my terms. I just felt like, I blinked, it was over, and I never took control of my life. I just let others guide me, down this path, or, parents' expectations, X, Y, Z, which is so sad. I really am hoping that our generation of parents are really just going to say to their kids, like, listen, you can literally do anything now thanks to the internet. So start finding your genius, because that's what the world needs, is your genius. So whatever you're doing in the world right now, just take a step back, give yourself the space and say, hey, where can I start intentionally taking control of my life and shifting in the areas that I need to shift? Maybe your relationship is great and your health is great, but you're not happy at your job. Or maybe you love your job, but you're 20 pounds overweight and that's affecting other things. Take a step back, identify it, and then set that SMART goal, that specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. That's what the Freedom Journal teaches you to do. And then it guides you in the accomplishment of that SMART goal in 100 days. So again, be the author of your own book because it's the only one you're going to write.
Well, that was awesome. And I certainly do appreciate you sharing with us today. And I can't even begin to thank you for enough for being on this. You know, you've been a real mentor to me in this journey of taking my career and kind of a new right hook and trying something new and different. And it's an honor and a privilege to have you. A lot of the people don't realize you've won a lot of awards. You've been one of the top podcasting shows. And it's just a real privilege to have you here today. So thank you.
Well, Belinda, I receive your very kind words. Thank you for sharing them. And it's just an honor to see what you're now doing and the inspiration that you're going to be providing to people that would never have heard of JLD or of EOFire. And you're going to have that great ripple effect in this world.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us at Work From Your Happy Place. If you like what you hear, please share it with your friends. And be sure to rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher. For a free gift on finding your own happy place, please visit workfromyourhappyplace.com and click on the free audio button. Thanks again for listening.